Hello and a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Alexandra. I'm the leader and the creative director of City of London Symphonia. And today I'm chatting with our super principal bassoon. Do you say bassoon? Bassoonist? Bassoon player?
Principal bassoon, I guess. I don't know.
Principal bassoon.
Bassoonist.
Well, principal bassoon, Ursula Leveaux. So welcome, Ursula. Thank you for joining me. Finally, we've had a few technical hitches, but we're here now. My fault entirely. I was trying to think, Ursula, how long you've been with the orchestra?
Oh, heavens.
Like four years or?
Yeah, probably 4 years. Maybe I started doing a little bit of work with the orchestra about 5 years ago, and then was officially appointed. So certainly I'm relatively new compared to some of the old hands who seem to have been there for years and have contributed so much. It's amazing. There's a whole history there.
But when we were sort of talking about having this little chat together, you expressed worry that the fact that you haven't been a member of the orchestra that long, as you said, sort of because there are some players who've been in the orchestra for a very long time. But I actually think that superbly qualifies you to have a chat because you can give us a fresh perspective on the orchestra in a way. And so I'm going to launch in with quite a biggie question, overarching question, which is what you particularly enjoy about working with CLS, what drew you to CLS, and what you love doing with the orchestra.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's a big question. There are lots of things that drew me to the orchestra, and the fact that it is a chamber orchestra, a great chamber orchestra, full of wonderful players. And I knew some of the wind players, and I'd played a long time with the chamber orchestra, and I love chamber orchestra playing, and life had sort of taken me in some other directions. So it felt like such an opportunity. And on top of that was the strong sense that it's an orchestra that has a really individual approach. And the concerts that I first did we used to do them down in Shoreditch in the Village Underground, and very conscious then of an orchestra that was connecting with different age groups and also mixing art forms. There'd be an actor and there'd be dance, but it was always there was so much imagination going into the programming. So in that sense, I found it really exciting to feel that I could be a part of that. And an opportunity to be a member means that you can kind of settle in a bit and kind of learn what you can contribute. And I'm not somebody who goes into an environment all guns firing instantly. So it's lovely to have an environment where I know I've got a chance to grow and develop. And then on top of that, there's all the extra work off the concert platform, which orchestra does so amazingly well. And I'm really enjoying, I feel like I'm only just beginning, but really enjoying learning and growing into that as well.
I think you're probably referring to the participation work, which we're quite proud of at CLS, and rightly so, I think. I wonder, I mean, hopefully the work we do with children in schools and in care homes and in hospitals and hospices, I mean, my firm belief is that it does help those people, and it does bring something to their lives, and it does perhaps inspire them or makes them feel something. But I also wonder how rewarding it is for the musician and what we as the players learn from those experiences.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the things that for me makes the CLS so particularly special is the fact that when you do go into any of those environments, you are immensely well supported, and you are helped to make use of your talents, your abilities, in such a way that you feel that what you're taking in is really authentic, it's really valuable, you're being true to yourself, to what you feel you've got to offer. And in a way, I think that's why you get such an amazing response from people. I've definitely been into schools and I've done projects which have, to a greater or less extent, ticked boxes. And I've come away feeling slightly guilty or hugely guilty. I felt that we've somehow been fooling them into thinking that it was worthwhile. And I had such a palpable sense that it wasn't. And with CLS, that seems really, for me, really different. And I feel literally encouraged. It's something that I haven't felt hugely confident about doing. And yet always they make sure that there's sessions, that you're trained, that you've got a clear idea what you're doing, what you're supposed to do, what's expected of you, chances to develop those skills. And then, of course, immensely supportive colleagues, which obviously a lot of orchestras, most orchestras have supportive colleagues, but I've been really struck by the quality of that in CLS, really.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I find that you learn not only from the leaders of the workshop or the group that you might be doing one day, but also you learn from the other players, because there's a great depth and range of skills amongst our players. And I think we're very lucky that we have that and that we're able to use that in lots of different ways. I
think the funny thing about an orchestra, which is to a large extent project-based, that obviously it's a year-round orchestra, and people can be very busy with the orchestra, but everybody does other things and always brings that back into the orchestra. So there's a huge wealth of different musical approaches, different musical experiences, and I think that does contribute to what then goes out into the other projects, the things that are not on the concert platform. Those skills all play a part. You mentioned that we're largely project-based, and that's probably a good thing for you. I would imagine most of our players live around London, or certainly commutable distance from London, but you live up in the Lake District, the beautiful Lake District, and I just wonder, in this these strange times of lockdown, whether you've been able to enjoy more where you live. Obviously you've been traveling less, so enjoy being at home with your family, but also enjoying that amazing countryside that's on your doorstep. We've seen it in your comfortable classical at home. It's right there, it's outside your house pretty much. Yeah, have you been able to make the most of that? Yes, I feel that we have, and it has been the most extraordinary time, because the Lake District has been empty, and it's unheard of, to have that beautiful weather in April and May when there was hardly a soul about. So it felt an incredibly privileged time to be here. So you could go for a walk on the fells, and to be honest, you can still do that actually when it's busy. It tends to be the places like the villages Ambleside and Bowness and Windermere and Grasmere can be amazingly busy. But there are certain walks around here which we've done, and we'll see lots of people, and we can do those and see not a soul. And we haven't done masses of climbing. We have tended to stay close to home in these times, and it's been very special. I mean, we live somewhere extraordinarily special at the moment, so of course we didn't need to go very far to have an experience of being in the Lake District. So yeah, I mean, in this time I felt less of a disadvantage as a musician being here, because we were all isolated in a way. And it is a bit of a compromise living here, and it's not a great career move. It's just the way life happened. So we have been making the most of it, and enjoying the fact that I can be here and not actually missing anything. Normally I have to accept that I let go of certain opportunities because it just doesn't fit in with the way life is. And I'm incredibly lucky to get what I do, but this time it's been a very still time, the feeling that everything is slightly in hiatus. And of course the Lake District is wonderfully ideal to experience that sense of stillness. Anyone that has seen your comfortable classical at home, you've done 2 now, I think that's right, 2 episodes. And if you haven't watched them, please do tune in on every Tuesday, Thursday, 11:30, and you can watch all of the past episodes via our website. So go and have a look if you haven't, they are lovely. But yes, anyone that's seen yours, Ursula, will know that you don't just play the sort of modern bassoon, you also play what we would call period instruments. And for those that don't understand these are musical terms necessarily, instruments have evolved over time, and particularly wind instruments. So in certain situations, you might be playing a piece of Bach, perhaps on an instrument closer to the sort that Bach would have intended when he wrote
his music. And I wondered, it's something I've always been intrigued about, always really wanted to do, but never quite had the courage to dabble in the period instrument world. But I wonder how you got into that, and when you started. Was it when you were studying or later on?
Well, no, I'd always have the passion. I've always had a passion for Baroque music from when I was teeny weeny, well, relatively teeny weeny. And at school, I went to music school, and at school I actually wanted to play the Baroque bassoon then, and they said no. In those days, I suppose it was considered a bit of a distraction from, your modern instrument study. But I was given recorder lessons, actually, with a wonderful player and teacher called John Turner, who'd worked with Dave Munro. So I sort of started that sort of sense of Baroque, understanding a bit more about Baroque then. And, I had a great passion for Vivaldi and all his concerti, and then I went to study in Holland with somebody called Brian Pollard, who he himself had been one of the people who'd been at the forefront, at the beginning of this sort of early music movement, certainly in Holland. And I studied with him quite a long while. And well, I was with him in a kind of gap year, and then I came back to London and then decided I needed to learn more. And I went back to Holland, and it was about sort of a year or so in then, he said to me, why don't you play the Baroque bassoon? And I said, I'm sure I'd said that to him early on, I want to play the Baroque bassoon. He said, no. And I'm not explaining this very well, but anyway, he said, wow, yeah, I think you'd enjoy the Baroque bassoon. Yes. And so he was the person who gave me my first lessons on the Baroque bassoon. And then I did an audition to get onto the course at The Hague. There was a Baroque course there. So I'd been a student in Amsterdam. Brian, by this time, actually wasn't playing the old instruments at all. His commitment was total to the Concertgebouw Orchestra. He was principal bassoon in the Concertgebouw Orchestra for 42 years. And he clearly felt that playing the Baroque bassoon was too much for him. But he gave me my first lessons. And so I auditioned and I got a place on the Baroque course. But then a year into that, I got my first principal bassoon job was with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. And so I kind of left my course and joined the orchestra, and always carried on playing Baroque bassoon. And I always felt it fed my modern playing as well. And I loved playing bass lines, and occasionally I'd go off and play my Baroque bassoon. And then when I left the orchestra, just the opportunities came more from the old instrument world. They tend to be booking earlier, and then eventually the Academy of Ancient Music offered me the position as principal bassoon, which I'm still slightly amazed about, because it was like a childhood wish, and there it was. And so I still feel like a student on the Baroque and classical bassoon, but I suppose that's the joy of it. It's kind of never quite knowing if it's going to work out.
Because they are quite different instruments than the modern bassoon, am I right? And so does that affect, without going into too much detail, does that affect things like fingerings as well?
Yes, you're playing different fingerings and you're swapping them between different instruments. But it's like learning a language. When I lived in Holland, I spoke Dutch. And whilst I was learning it was at the front, and even swapping between English and Dutch was sort of a bit slow. And then eventually it kind of found and moved somewhere else in my brain, so I could swap quickly from Dutch to English. And Baroque bassoon was a bit like that. When I was learning it, I was kind of mixing up fingerings, but somehow there came a point when it becomes a part of you and it slips into another place. So I find it relatively simple to swap from modern to Baroque. And then you get to classical instruments. I mean, my motivation for playing the instruments was as much to play the music. It wasn't my necessary passion to play the Baroque bassoon. It was just what it allowed me to do. And the classical bassoon kind of led on from that. And that's a bit like speaking Dutch and German. I speak less good German than I do Dutch. And so I find it harder to swap between the two because they're a bit similar. And so certainly initially classical and Baroque were terribly difficult to sort of separate in my head. But then it's like you learn it, it becomes a different part of your brain, and then you can find you can swap. So I feel, again, with the classical bassoon, I haven't played it as much as the Baroque or the modern, so it's always a little bit scary.
And I mean,
I love playing with it.
You say that it sort of feeds how you play your modern bassoon as such. Does it feel odd now, though, if you say go and play some Bach or some Vivaldi on your modern instrument, or is it just like another language, and you use what you know from the Baroque bassoon to sort of enrich that?
Yes, I would say that absolutely. You kind of described it really well. And I think the term that I love, rather than authentic or original, is the historically informed performance, which is exactly what it is. Then it doesn't really matter what instrument you're playing, because it's all about your understanding of the music. Clearly, the instruments, when you play your gut strings or your Baroque bassoon, you're understanding something about the physical demands that the music was written on, you know, that there was sort of natural response, maybe, but actually for me it's equally valid to play it on the modern instrument. It's just having that understanding of the quality of the music. HIP, historically informed performance. That for me is the important feature, not necessarily the instrument. The instrument is a tool to playing, and sometimes I'm worried that the old instruments then become the end in themselves and not just an instrument to playing the music. So, you know, keeping the balance, I think, is the thing.
Now, I was thinking about these multiple bassoons, sorts of bassoons that you play, and in lockdown, I know that lots of people have been maybe going up in their loft and finding old instruments out that they've not played for many years, or learning new skills. And I wonder, it can't be a bassoon, it can't be some sort of bassoon, but if you could learn any other instrument, what would it be?
Well, I have always had an aspiration. If you've seen my comfortable classicals, you'll notice that I have a quite fondness for folk music. And a few years ago, I went to something called a non-dancing ceilidh in Northumberland, which is basically lots of interesting performances at the end of a week of music making. And it was in a cattle market area. It was fantastic. But there was a person there, Alistair Anderson, and he got up and he played the English concertina in a way that was so amazing. And I realized then that instruments are only as limited as the person who played them. And he showed that you could sing and dance and do anything on this English concertina. And since then I have aspired to be good enough to play in the pub. By the time I retire, I'm failing miserably. I'm still a complete beginner on the English concertina, but that is my aspiration, to be a really good English concertina player, because you can accompany, you can sing and dance. It's very compact. You can take it anywhere. You could bring it out at parties in the pub, obviously. So yeah, that would be my aspiration, to be a really, really good English concertina player. English as in, there's different kind of concertinas. There's an Anglo and there's a duet or something. Anyway, so that's why it's not my nationality, it's just the form of it's an English concertina.
That's fantastic. I've got an image of you now, Ursula, after a long walk in the Lake District, in a pub somewhere, playing your English concertina.
Yeah,
fantastic.
That would be it. Yeah.
Oh.
We can but dream. So, you know, I mean, I dreamt of playing the Baroque when I was little, so maybe if I just keep aspiring.
Watch this space. Exactly. Well, Ursula, it's been so lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining me. And I hope you continue to enjoy the beautiful countryside where you live and spending time with your family. But I also hope that we get to play together soon.
Yes, me too.
It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much. It's been a treat.